just recently started her journey in the
Yeah.
first year of university.
Okay,
She's
that's
gone to the
nice.
Cape Peninsula University of Technology. So she's moved provinces altogether.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been super excited about her. I've been literally stalking her WhatsApp statuses as she posts like new exciting things about her new life in a new city and
Oh,
this
that's great.
new varsity experience. And I saw, the videos when she went to orientation day and she's like, oh, it's so exciting. She took pictures of the banner of the library and all sorts of things, right? And she's also, though, started studying even before orientation started because she wanted to get ahead of it. And that's what we're speaking about in this hour of the show. Although it is quite exciting for these new first year students to sort of get into the life of university, be part of this community that's so different from your normal life, the real work can actually start hitting hard right from the get-go. And that's why we want to speak about this today. How can new students navigate the challenges to come out on top, particularly in their first year? Joining us in this one is Dingaan Moropane, the campus head at the IIE's Rosebank College. Thank you so much for joining us, Dingaan. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to your listeners,
Yes.
Balisa, and good morning to you as well, Benjamin.
Thank
It's
you,
certainly
man.
an exciting time, isn't it? I mean, these young ones are being catapulted into this new world where they also have a sense of independence and so many other things that they get to see there. But I don't think most of them are ready to understand how the education at university works very differently from where they've been in high school.
Great, Balisa. It's quite an interesting moment for many matriculants, the transitioning of the basic education into higher education. And what we often see is there is this thing called orientation week. And during orientation week, that's where actual critical information about the qualification, about the institution requirements, about assignments, about classes are shared. But equally, what we also say is that during the orientation week, because we're wanting to, ease and put students at ease in terms of not feeling too intimidated about the higher education space. Like you mentioned about your cousin, where we've got quite a lot of students, coming out of different geographical locations into closer of these higher education institutions. Some, it means traveling out of a province that they used to have a support structure and coming into like a completely new environment. Now, with orientation, what normally happens is we want to ease them, we pay them, we expose them. So there's a lot of fun that is normally accompanied by orientation. But orientation only lasts a week. And immediately at the end of the week, the real business of higher education begins. The academic pressure sets in. We often get a lot of students on day one not even knowing where to attend their classes. And I think,
Ooh.
that's when, sometimes panic would come in.
Let's speak about the importance of orientation. You spoke briefly about some of the things that happened during that week, but why is it so important for these, kids to actually have this orientation season before their classes start?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question, Palace. Orientation week is quite a critical week where, the academic information is shared. Students receive timetables, they receive a module registration confirmation around the number of modules they are going to do this year or this semester. They receive what we call assessment planners, where it shows them when the first set of assessments are due. During orientation, quite a lot of academic information is discussed, including like I mentioned, things like your timetables, venues you're going to attend, how often your classes are going to take place, what is required, including things like even access to systems, because these days there is quite a good integration of technology into how students learn, access to systems where they're going to download the academic material, they're going to have access to that. So during that week, it's really spent on ensuring that students actually sets. It's quite a critical week that sets students for academic success throughout the year. You miss that orientation week, you're going to struggle throughout the year, and you're going to constantly find yourself under pressure or uninformed or having missing quite a couple of things.
Yeah, one of those things that happen during this time is that there's also that separation anxiety from the family environment to the, I'm on my own, I'm in college, and this is a place where I have to venture out on my own. And then there's also just anxiety also from the parents themselves saying, is this one going to cope? And am I going to cope without them? What would you advise for parents and also their children to do to create a good separation, but also to stay in touch during that first phase of orientation?
Thank you. Thank you, Benjamin. We do, as I mentioned earlier on, that many of these students, potentially they leave their homes, they leave, the structures that were there in high schools. They would be having a teacher that looks after them. They've attended. If not, they'll call a parent and all of that. And then they now travel to this higher education or find themselves in these higher education spaces where now, as you mentioned, isolation sets in. And now there's that sense of loneliness or sense of belonging. Sometimes what we often see, even in some of the students, is homesick. And it does have an impact on the academic and the emotional support that they require. What we normally recommend is that we do have in many higher education institutions what we call student support wellness department, where students can, even during orientation, we really encourage students to do networking as early as possible. During this orientation, like I mentioned, there's normally fun spaces, there's normally pairing of students. So we encourage students to rather start, networking, join your peer, meet, because even if you come from, let's say, for example, you come from KZN and you're studying in Joburg as an example, I'm sure you would bump into people that come from the same province. And if you're lucky, you can actually even bump into people that have went to the same school. So we really encourage students to go out there, network as much as possible, not only just, looking for the peers that they've got, meet the tutors, meet the lecturers. In many higher education institutions, what we also say is there's quite a lot of, student initiatives such as, reading clubs, gym, clubs, societies, cultural societies. We encourage to join that because then the moment you participate and start finding yourself in these small communities, you've got that sense of belonging. To parents, it also going to set quite an emotional state where now you are used to meeting your child every day after school, and now you are sending them away 400 kilometers outside their home. What we often encourage, and this is for me is quite a critical one, Benjamin and Palisa, is what we encourage parents to do is stay in touch. If we have to do like a phone call every Friday just to check in, see how you're doing, have you settled in, where do you stay, who do you share with, do you know the person, are you emotionally okay? Sometimes doing surprise visits into these higher education institutions, they are allowed, come in, bring scuffed in as an example, meet the child, make sure that they continue having that sense of support, not only just from their peers in the higher education, but even, their, parent or sponsor support. In cases where, there are relatives near those institutions, we encourage the relatives to come in and really show up for the students, because in that way, it will remove or reduce that sense of isolation and loneliness.
Incredible. All right, let's take a break, Dingaan. We'll come back. And I want to speak about the mindset, because it seems like all of this starts with the mindset of these young ones. We'll go through some of those rookie mistakes that these little ones do that actually set them up for disaster, and how they can replace some of these with more positive ones, like some of the ones that you mentioned right now, in order to set themselves up for success as well. So if you're a parent, a guardian, an auntie or an uncle to someone who's starting their journey in university, or maybe finishing their journey in primary education, you should definitely be listening closely.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Hey, maybe you're a mom and you are thinking right now, oh, my daughter or my son is no longer here. They've just completed this orientation season that we are currently just wrapping up in universities. And also there's that separation anxiety. Today we've got a guest to help us on this one, Dingaan Moropane, the campus head at the IIE's Rosebank College. And we speak about how to move things forward post orientation, but also how to facilitate that orientation season in a way that is going to be beneficial for a first year. And being a first year is daunting, right? Because it's a new environment, but also you've got that people factor that you need to get yourself into as a student, socialize yourself, as you've been saying, join the clubs in that university. But one of the things that can happen is that you can easily lose why you were there, that you're there for education, not just for the social aspects of things. And I think some of those are the biggest mistakes, when you just get taken away by the wind of popularity, or also just the custom of just being away from home, and you forget the education focus. How do we make sure that, the first years are focused and they know that, this is the goal, to actually wrap things up in 3 years' time?
Thanks. Thanks, Benjamin. I fully agree with you. What we often see as one of the mistakes that first years in particular make is, neglecting the physical and mental health, which are quite critical to survive first year university, by sacrificing a balance for what we call the university experience. Because of the independence, now I'm no longer home. I eat what I want to eat. Too many late night outs, or just sitting around all day and doing nothing. Energy crashes. You catch every buck going around, and mentally you start feeling, frayed around the edges way sooner than expected. And what we normally encourage students to do, Palisa and Benjamin, is they gotta practice discipline around that independence.
Sure.
And when I just mentioned a few things, prioritizing, just sleeping, because that also is quite important. There'll be times where you gotta put in more hours, but you can imagine if you're not sleeping now, when you are required to then put more hours in 2 weeks' time, how is it gonna be? So prioritizing an 8-hour sleep nightly, it's quite an important health and then mental thing that one needs to exercise. Scheduling regular balanced meals. In many institutions, we see students being in self-catering, environments, or being given the option of choosing what they need to eat. But I think balanced dietary is quite important, because we often say a healthy body and a healthy mind. Incorporating movements, like I mentioned earlier on, gyms, taking walks, participating in sports. And again, what you mentioned earlier on, Benjamin, is, you gotta set boundaries around socializing and partying. It's very easy to fall into that trap of, having friends that often they will create their own time, and you'll be their entertainment time. So they would go and study, and whenever they want to take a break, they'll come to you and say, no, let's go out, let's take a walk. So it's quite important that you set those boundaries quite strictly, to say, okay, every Friday from 3 o'clock until 5 p.m., I can go and watch a movie or take a walk or go into gym. But 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock, I'm studying. I'm looking at what we covered this week. I'm making notes and all of that. So those boundaries are very critical. View self-care as an essential fuel, and a balanced social life with study responsibilities to sustain the long-term performance and the well-being.
My niece and I had a conversation before she left for Cape Town, and the one thing that I wanted to tell her was to use the resources that are on campus to her greatest ability. And that's because you come from, a school environment where all you have is the teaching and maybe a little tuck shop for your food. But here it's almost like a campus is almost like a mini city that has clinics on board, mental health support, mentorship support, and academic support. How important is it to use the resources of the campus to the best of your ability in order to get the necessary support on all ends in navigating your journey in university?
Thank you, Palisa. It's quite important. And what we see is many students don't use these resources as early as possible. Sometimes they would come in when it's too late. So it's quite important that students are familiar with the support space in higher education. They shouldn't hesitate to approach lecturers to actually know the consulting hours of their lecturers, of their tutors, to know the operating resources and availability of like a department called student wellness, and support services, access to academic advising, counseling, writing centers, financial aid. They gotta use these resources as early as possible. And one of the tips I want to share with you, Palisa, that many of the first years don't know. If you attend your lecturers and you consult with your lecturers, your tutors, you are regular in the support center, there is a record that is kept. At any point when you require support or academic counseling, the lecturers are even quite familiar with you in class. They can see you. You actually pave the environment in that at any point you can go back to that lecturer. You almost create that relationship with the lecturer that will assist you in future. Should you struggle with something, there are records to say, but this particular student has been, attending tutorials, has been to the student wellness, has been utilizing this thing that we call learner management system, where they're doing additional activities, they're accessing recommended materials. Those resources can actually be used to leverage your success and mitigate any factors that may impact your academic success going forward. So it is quite critical, Palisa, that they make use of these resources. And what is also important is they make use of these resources as early as possible. Don't wait a day before the assignment. That's when you're going to the writing center. Go now, understand what is being offered there. Go look at your assignment and make sure that, okay, and for this particular section of my assignment, I would need the writing center because they've explained what they can offer.
Well, they're no longer school bells, and mommy's not waking you up in the morning with urgency to get into the school transport, right? And that's one of those things that you can actually take advantage of as a student. Any advice there on reminders?
Yes, poor time management and chronic procrastination. Benjamin, as you put it, when no longer the principal comes out and then we run into classrooms or bells or all of those things. The recommendation there is get yourself a planner. It could be digital, it could be a physical calendar based on your timetable from day one. Plot all the assignment due dates, plot when you're taking breaks, when you're going to be in the library, when you're going to be in the writing center, and have it and break it down into manageable chunks, either daily or weekly, and start your work as early as possible. I think what would make many of this first year to survive is understanding that the independence come with the responsibility, but for you to fulfill that responsibility, it's not as simple as creating a planner and being disciplined towards adhering to the planner.
Well, great tips that you've given us, Dingaan. Thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa. Where can we go to find out more about Rosebank College, or maybe if you have your own social media platforms, if you give such advice online?
Thank you. Thank you, Palisa and Benjamin, for the discussion. Anyone who wants to follow Rosebank College can go into www.rosebankcollege.co.za. And I'm Dingaan Moropane on any of the socials. Thank you very much and good day.
Wonderful conversation. Yeah, we're wrapping up orientation, and I hope that the first years are ready for their new adventure of education. So many things to balance, right? Okay, we'll talk a little bit later about this one. Let's get our latest sports. It's 9:30 Central African Time.
Sports.